All right, boys and girls. Da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Bam. Shada-ba-da-da. All right, ladies and gentlemen. This is the live stream. And much like last time, came all the way out here, forgot headphones. So I am trusting the people in the chat to let me know whether or not this thing is actually working. But you say that it is. And I'm just looking now, and I forgot to charge the battery before I put the V-mount on the camera, and it is flashing. So if this thing dies, I've got batteries around here somewhere. I could take care of it. All right, man. What's happening? It's been almost 3 weeks, and the vacation, workcation, is over, and we're back here. And what are we going to be talking about today? We'll probably be breaking down some stuff. We'll be looking at some of the stuff that you guys have sent in, which is always fun, right? To see other people's work and to take a dump on it. Definitely going to be doing that. What else has been happening? Oh, here's a story. Now, actually, before we get started, last time there was a bit of a debate about what's going on there. About do we do the chat in the actual chat, or do we do the chat through Patreon? Because it doesn't really do anything if there's no chat. Really, the live stream is serves no purpose. So the idea of the live stream is to be able to chat back and forth. And I think the consensus was, rather than using Patreon and letting people in the future be able to follow along with the conversation, it's easiest just to use YouTube, because that's what I can see. I can't see the Patreon one because every time a comment comes in, I have to refresh the page. If there's a way around that you know, let me know. But I don't know a way around it, and I can hear the phone buzzing, and essentially that's people commenting on Patreon, which does me no good. So if I imagine people are having trouble finding this thing like they did last time, you just refresh the Patreon page. It should show up, and we should be live. So if you have something to add, or if the project that you're breaking down, that we're breaking down this week, is yours, and you want to chat, do it on the YouTube, please. Hopefully you can find the YouTube. I don't know where it is. I imagine you click on this video and that brings you to a YouTube page. I haven't actually been on your site. I can see some people are typing in. Ray's here. Benny has already given me the sound check. Ben Yonker shit himself when I said Benny. So that's it for the other stuff. Now, talking about reels and talking about being on vacation, I made the fatal error of, when you're going to be on, basically if you're on any flight over 4 hours, it takes up the majority of your time. You can't do anything else that entire day. You got to get there an hour and a half early. It's a giant pain in the ass. You get there, you got to wait for the rental car or your bags or anything like that. It ends up being 8 hours. So I figure I'm going to be smart. I'm going to take all of my drives with me, which is about, I don't know, maybe at least, I forget what I said in the year in review podcast, but say 26 drives. I take a drive to every gig. I want some stills. I want some moving images just to make sure that the camera isn't shitting itself. To every single job, I'm taking a separate hard drive. That's fantastic. It's a really great workflow, and it's super easy to stay organized. The problem is when you go to cut a reel, and I hate reel cutting, and I've talked about that many times here. I am a disastrous editor. There's nothing that pains me more than looking back at the old shitty work and thinking what I would do now. Everybody's got that excuse, but when I go on the road, I'm like, oh, okay. If somebody asks me for a reel, or if they say, listen, you don't have this on your reel, can we see it? That's the one time that I'll end up cutting a reel. And I'm still in that stage, obviously, because I just did it. But the pain in the ass is I gotta take 20 different hard drives with me. I got them here. This is what I had to take on the plane. I'm thinking, I'll kill two birds with one stone. I got 15. This is one stack of the hard drives. And I'm on the plane like an idiot, taking up like 15 seats, like getting all the drives out, remembering which project is on which drive, because I haven't labeled them, of course. I just throw them in there. Toshiba is generally the shit gigs. And then, I don't know, some other way of organizing is the good stuff. But all to say, I cut a reel, and it's a disaster, only because I blame it on the plane. But I had to get it out for a very important job. And guess what? I didn't get the job. So the real shitty, and I didn't get the job. So there you go, trying to tailor your stuff to what other people are looking for. That completely bombed, and it didn't work at all. So I hate reels. I'm sure you do too. I can't imagine anyone actually likes them. So that's my sort of how I blew it over the travel period, right? Because I had an opportunity at a good job, and then you'll never know. Was it the shitty reel that didn't get you the gig? Was it when the director called you and you called him a bit of a fuckwit? Either of those things could have turned a lot of people off on me for the project. So I don't know. Okay, let's look at some of the questions here before we get into what you guys have already submitted. All right, we got Angel Navarro. Which anamorphic lens are you using to shoot this live stream? This is the 50mm from a 50mm square front from Lomo, and this is T4, so should be in focus. If I'm not in focus, that's because manually I'm adjusting it, then sitting back down. I need some sort of assistant here to help me with the live stream, but that's probably not going to happen because people have lives. Okay. Ray cut my first reel last year. Not fun. There is nothing worse. There is nothing worse than sitting down and going, Jesus, this was my whole year? This stuff is terrible. And you realize that. But then I also find that there is similar shots throughout the years. I've become so lazy that now I slot in. Actually, I could probably show it to you. Actually, I know I can show it to you because I've arranged for this. I just slot in the new stuff right on top of the old stuff. So if we go like this, okay. So this is my reel, and you can see how disorganized I am, right? I got fucking shit everywhere. I got clips on top of clips on top of clips. Like I'll just slot on top. Let's see, what's this? I think that's the old with the new. There you go. There's the old shitty version, and then the colored version. You can see what a difference the colored version makes. But that's just me using proxies, and then I'll go in and grade, and then on top of the proxies, I'll lay the final thing. But I'm getting so lazy, I just lay on the new stuff. I keep the same music. I've had the same music for 3 years. Somebody said what it was. I can't even remember who did it. I can't remember it now, the name of the song. I care very little, as long as it makes sort of sense to the piece. And, you know, sometimes you go in for that flowing sort of edit. That's why I can't remember now why I originally picked it, but I imagine that's why I picked it. And I just lay the things on top, and every time I look at this, it's just like, oh my God, why did I do that when I could have done this? But, you know, you got to do it, right? Like, hopefully, geez, sweet Jesus, look at how red this guy is. Probably overcooked it on that shot. Definitely. I don't know. Is this let me go back to the chat here. Is this thing coming through in real time? Because it looks like I am severely slower. Oh, perfect. Jeff, the man we've been trying to get on the show for at least 12 months. Welcome to the live stream. As a director, I never watch DP's reels. Always their final spots. Who are they for? This is a very good question. I have no idea who they're for. I've never been contacted by a director for a reel. I've always been contacted by a proxy person, which basically means I'm getting filtered out by the filter. That's the level that I'm at. So essentially, the person that, I don't know, I imagine, at least the way I've heard it in every other scenario, is, I'll take it off this red guy for a sec, because it's distracting me. I imagine that the director says, this is who I'd like to work with. And they give, you know, whatever, 5 names, or if you're in a larger market where people aren't as available, maybe you give a few more names. The person who is responsible for getting people on the job, the producer or production manager, whoever it is that is doing the hiring, depending on the size of the budget and the size of the crew and the size of the project, they're going to go out there and do that. I get asked for my reel from random people that are somehow associated with production companies. So it's never like, a director's never like, hey, can you send me that edit that you did that's a minute long of most of your shots that are dog shit? I never get that. So I'm not exactly sure who they're for, but every time I'm asked, I think, what am I doing on this plane flight? I'm doing nothing. I'll cut a new reel. So that's what I imagine who they're for. Okay, let's get into what else we got here. If shooting, this is one's from Sherman. If I shoot 2 times anamorphic on a 16:9 sensor on an Amira, is the cropped 240 going to be less than 1080p? Jesus, what are we doing here? You grilling me with math? No, it's not going to work. I mean, I'm sure it does work. I've seen people shoot I've seen people shoot anamorphic on the Amira. I know that it is possible. I think what you would have to do is you would have to shoot the full sensor. So you'd have to shoot, or as much as you could, of OpenGate, which is 3.2. You'd have to shoot 3.2. Then you'd have to get a monitor out that could de-squeeze the image for you, because I don't think it can squeeze in camera. There's a lot of workarounds. I'm sure it's possible. Definitely it's not just like a plug-in play, like a 4x3 Alexa or a XT or something like that. It's definitely going to be more difficult. So whatever you're doing, you're complicating things with the Amira. I'd go the 4x3, unless you're looking for the other cool bits of the Amira, which are good, right? The Amira is a really cool camera, and I don't know, I probably would have leaned that way if there was RAW and 4x3, but there's not, because that's a fucking expensive camera. And they didn't chuck those things in the Amira. But there are workarounds if you're not into that. All right, haven't shot with the Lomos, blah, 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 Angel. I've read about them, glad to see they're working. Well, they're not really that great, the Lomos. But the good part about the Lomos is they're not that great, right? When I got this set, it was complete dog shit. Hadn't been touched for years. I've told this story a million times. I sent it off to the Ukraine. Fingers crossed that whoever gets the package there, if they get the package there, remembers my address and ships it back to me. I can't remember the guy's name, Oleg or something like that. A guy, I think he originally, either him or his dad worked in the Lomo factory, and he's the only one I could find that would repair square fronts, right? Panavision here in Australia, they said no. Aries said no. All the people that I generally go to, there was one guy in Australia that used to do it, Dom something, and he was on vacation or like a long leave sabbatical for like 6 months. So I had to get somebody else to do it. But they are dog shit, but you have to embrace the dog shit. And I think we've talked about that in previous projects, where the good part about the shitty aspect is you can't get rid of the shitty aspect. That's it. You're stuck with it. Like, it looks cool. It looks unique, and you can never get rid of it, which is a benefit. So I would say, yeah, that's a very good thing. Okay, let's go to, what do we got here? If you could only use one large modifier on a shoot, would it be a reflector or neg? It would be neg. It would be neg, because if I've only got one, that means I probably only have one person, which means controlling stuff is going to be really difficult. But if you're only shooting with one person, I don't know, you got to tailor your project to what you can actually get away with. Like, you're not going to really do that much with one neg. With one person means you're probably pretty flexible, which means you could probably just flex your schedule and then make everything look good. Okay, I'm wasting time. I'm still in, what do we got here? Oh, we already did the reel. Let's go to, should we start looking at other people's stuff? Right, we might as well. Let's see. Questions. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Actually, before I do it, I put up on the site the last few days on Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, that the podcast is going live. It's going live, and it's going live in person. Essentially, I'm coming to Los Angeles the end of May and the beginning of June, and I'm going to do a few weeks there. And I'm just, because LA just happens to be the hub where a lot of cinematographers are, and I'm going to come there, do a bunch of interviews, just try and knock out as many as I can, because in person, there really seems to be a difference in the conversation. Now, I've had a bunch of different times where we've had interviews on Skype, and they've been fantastic, and it's really good to lock people down, like a Chase or a Rob or a Ben or these guys that are all around the world. It's a fantastic tool, but it does change the flow of the conversation. You know, now I think we've gotten to the point where, I mean, I beat home the technical things so much, and just beating it home and beating it home and beating it home, that pretty soon, you know, you're like, yeah, dude, we get it. You know, an 18K through a 12 by looks pretty good. Or, you know, a 4K through an 8x8. If you're inside and you don't want it to look like shit and you got to flag it off, yeah, we get those things. What I think is interesting, and you guys can tell me, I'm getting lost because I'm looking at the questions. What I think is interesting is just the flow of conversation that happens, right? The intricacies of every job, exactly what happens, like when we had JP Summers on the show this week. You know, just hearing the little details about how they got things done in those last 5 minutes, or how a shot got added, or how something actually got done, I think is becoming more and more important for the show, and more important for people to realize overall. You know, JP was a great case where this is a guy that no one was asking for him to shoot shit, and he's just going out there and bootstrapping and getting the job done. And I think that's something that, you know, we can all learn from. and take away. And it's interesting to hear that that happens even on what you would think would be the biggest budget shoots. A lot of the time it comes down to, like when Rob was on the show and he's saying it comes down to him and Khalid going, man, this storyboard sequence sucks. Like that thing, that parking lot when we were driving in, that seemed to be pretty good. Let's go back there. That seemed like the shot. We'll tell the agency to go fuck themselves. You don't really say that, right? You say, hey, we got everything we wanted here. We're going to just run ahead for a second and see if there's any locations. We're just going to take the talent with us. Okay, I'm wasting time. Okay, no more. Sorry, what's Logan's last one? If you were trying to build a portfolio and do better work, would you buy lighting equipment? No, I wouldn't buy lighting equipment. I wouldn't buy lighting equipment because you got to think about how many jobs you're doing and the return of that actually coming off. We've talked about buying gear here multiple times. Like the amount of jobs that you have to be doing to return on gear. M18, if you're buying an Arri M18 and a 12 by, like, first of all, you got to lug that around. How are you going to lug around a 12 by 12? That's a giant pain in the ass. I would say, see how many jobs you're actually doing per year. Do the numbers. Doesn't make sense. Okay, let's get into this shot here. Okay, this is some sort of Nintendo commercial, and I can't remember who sent it in, but because I just did the screenshots. But let's take a look at this. We've done this product photography. This is essentially the same thing as the phone shot, as the credit card shot, as the wallet shot. This is if you are doing retail ads, this is like the, I don't know, the bread and butter for retail, and we've broken down a bunch of these. What I would say here is they put you in a difficult spot straight away, right? They put you in a hard spot because you are inside of this car, and I'll just briefly explain the commercial for you if you're just joining. But essentially, this guy is in this car. He's playing Nintendo Switch. He gets out of the car, which we'll see later. He goes inside his house, and he's still playing Nintendo, and he plays all day, right? That's the idea of the commercial. The hard part is when you're doing these product stuff is you got to find areas and locations that are going to be beautiful, and they stick you right away in a car, right? Which is not going to be beautiful. A car, normally what happens is you're cramped. There's not a lot of places where you can put lights. You can't really get good angles on things. So already, you're in a tough spot because you're in this cramped little tiny car. Plus the windows relative to where this guy has to position the switch is going to make it hard to get beautiful light on there. But we can point out a few things. So let's look at, take this, move it over a little bit, grab a pen, make it smaller, grab this thing, and this is generally my computer starts shitting itself. So you got whatever light it is coming through there, right? I imagine this is just daylight, even though you said you had 3 and 3 on this, which is a big ass crew, and you had 3 cameras for this commercial, that's a lot of cameras. But you got the light coming in from the side, right? That makes perfect sense. It's a car. Light's going to come from the side. It's not going to come from over here. The problem is when you're coming with light from over here, you end up getting a lot of fill, which takes away some of the shape. You normally you'd want this just to be a little bit darker over here. This just seems a little bit filled in, but you've done well to get, you want to get this light, where is it? You want to get this light coming here as much around this way as you can, because that will create as much shape on the product itself, right? You want this little, maybe like a little highlight up here to show it off or something. And I know it's difficult because you're in a car. I'm not expecting fantastic results here, but ideally that's what you're going for. The good thing about this shot, nice soft shadows, in here, you can't really see the hard outline, which is a good thing. Again, the problem being with this angle is you get this black nothingness against this black edge. That black edge here is next to this black nothingness. So that's not ideal. And the way that you would combat that is, I don't know, you probably take off, like up here is going to be the driver's side headrest, or the driver's side headrest. You take that off, you put a 2x4 piece of diffusion, and you come that way with the light. And you're thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would the light be coming through the headrest while you're shooting a Nintendo Switch ad? And it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be beautiful. And I would say that's how you would get around the idea that it would be really hard to put light in that certain area. I guess, and it's all a thing of balance and a thing of contrast. It's kind of hard to see what that black thing is. Why am I so slouchy? It's kind of hard to see that. I would probably just want just a little bit more level let's go back to it, in the black bit here. Just a little hint just to show you some sort of edge. And that doesn't mean just pushing light directly at it. You know, you can slightly rake it along. That way it just brings out the outline of the chair a little bit more. So I would say on this shot, that's how I'd get around it. I'd take off the headset or the headrest. I'd move this light around this way and just try and get a little more edge. And then maybe, you know, maybe you floppy this off a bit so you get a little bit darker over here, and you're good to go. But I mean, this is a good job in a cramped little space, right? I just say it's ever so slightly filled in. Okay, now because I can't do every single shot in this ad, we are inside the house. Now there's 2 shots inside this place. One of the shots is really good. The other shot is sort of this one, which you know, it's tricky because you haven't really been given the keys to the best kingdom here in terms of location, because you're in a white walled room and you're trying to make it bright, but you're still trying to give it some shape. And what ends up happening is the light, wherever you put up light, it starts bouncing around all over the place. And I can see in the reflection of this guy's eyes, you can see one here and you can see one there. Eye lights. So you got 2 lights going on here, which, you know, if you're going high key, you're probably going to have to put up 2 lights, especially if you're on a location. But you don't necessarily have to put 2 lights on the talent, right? How do you make sense of this? What I would do if I was going into a situation where I still wanted some high key beautiness to it, but not like a L'Oreal commercial, right? You still want this to have some shape. It's just supposed to be daytime, bright. I would still try and only single source him. You know, you're single sourcing. Let's go to it. You're single sourcing from maybe this way, right? So let's say you're inside and you've got a 4K. You got a 4K coming through a 12 by 12 of quarter grid, right? Or of half grid. And that will give you side light here, and it'll give you maybe a little cheek here, and that'll give you that key. Then what happens is off of that key, well, the 4K is going to be based on the exposure inside the room, right? And the amount of lights that you have access to. I just say 4K because if we're inside, that is what I would go to. If the lamp has to be inside. If I can put the lamp outside, well, then you go bigger. But if you're inside, 4K is generally small enough, the actual lamp itself, and the level that it puts out once you put it through, you know, like a loosely hung 12 by 12, or once you put it through an 8 by 8. That's going to give you enough level to give you this sort of keyed look depending on the location. So you set up that 4K, right, from over here. Got it, through the 12 by. Then I would say, okay, it's not high key enough, right? It looks too moody. We're only getting flow from one direction. Well, from that opposite direction, I would say we need to boost the ambient of the entire room. Boosting the ambient of the entire room will give you, well, if you boost the ambient, it gives you more level. Doesn't it make sense? So that would lift all of back here and all of back here, but you still have the same shape on him. And then, of course, as you lift the ambient back here, this is going to become ever so, you know, this side of his face, as it's getting darker and darker and darker, because this is getting brighter and brighter and brighter, the mood will have to change. But at least you'll have some shape on his face. Because right now, if you look at it, you know, this is the same as this. We're sort of hitting him with our own version of the sun sandwich, whereas if you did, you know, let's see, invert, where is it? Invert that, and then open it up like this, and then we paint a little bit on, oops, something like that, you know, whoops, that's probably too much. You go like that, and then yep, feather it out. Okay, let me back it way off. That still looks terrible, but you know, you get the idea of where the shape should be coming from. Then it can still be high key in there, it can still be daytime, but you're not just going super flat. So I would say at all costs, avoid the flatness. You know, if you're looking at the monitor and the agency comes over or the director comes over, like, dude, I just talked to the agency. They say, why is it nighttime when it's supposed to be, you know, 3 in the afternoon? Can you fix it quickly? You go, yeah, I could fix it. We'll make it not look like this. We'll make it look like what I would do. Again, what I just said, 4K, ambient in the background, and then you fill at the very last second. You're like, ooh, are they going to go for it? Are they going to use this level of moodiness? And then if they don't go for it, then you bring in the fill from the opposite side. But I wouldn't, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a situation besides the L'Oreal commercial where you would hit him from both sides with light, and I can't think of it. So that's what I would say here for this shot. Now, again, with our product shot, I've been over this a million times. I don't know. You know, this is sort of a production design thing. But if I was looking through the eyepiece and I saw this, I'd be like, this is the best background that we got, this light wood thing. Like this here. Oops. This here. And this is what I would say in the location scout or the tech scout or when talking to the production. Like this here looks awfully close to his skin tone. Like, can't we get something to mix it up? Some sort of contrast. Either a darker wood or a different material or something, you know, I don't know, something different than this to add just a little bit of interest, because this wood here looks like this wood here, these tones, and then you got this yellow thing here, all sort of look very similar in the world. In terms of lighting, you know, you got good stuff going on here. You got this little edge that's in here. You got nice shadows in here. I'd probably, you know, we don't really care. Essentially, nobody cares about anything outside of this little box, right? That's, and I don't know if that's in focus either. But nobody cares about anything outside that box, right? Whoever's at the monitor, they don't care either. So make that little box look good and then darken this stuff down. You know what I mean? Like if we're coming in here, we do this, we invert it. Oops. Invert. How do I do it? Like that. Open this up. Man, I am out of practice. Out of practice on these tools. Yeah, you just darken everything up around it. That way, people's eye are drawn to what you actually want them to be looking at, right? We don't need this. This could be darker too. Maybe we'll leave that little edge there. This can be darker. Leave that little corner edge. Blur. And then take it down. You know what I mean? It just sits better. Because that's the whole idea with location lighting. All you're trying to do when you're on location, if you are putting up a light, you want that light to feel like it's just sitting there naturally. It should sit in with the rest. If you feel, generally what happens is if you look at the monitor and you're like, man, this feels lit. That's because one light is sticking out way too much. Either the level is way too hot or the shape of the shadow is completely different than all of the other lights that are inside the space. And you have to make those sit so it feels within a piece. But still, like the whole goal of being there on set is you help to decide where we want people to be looking. And you can do that through light, or you can do that through lensing. You know, you do that in collaboration with the director. You're saying, okay, you know, what do we care about what's in the background on this shot? No. Okay, well, let's get that shitty table out of the way. Let's put something more interesting. We'll shoot longer along the room to get some depth. Because right now it feels like we're shooting right into that table, which is just creating this plane of, you know, essentially blocking the interesting stuff that could be happening in the background. So that's what I would say for that shot. Let's get into the shot that I really liked. This one. Bam, now we're talking. Oh, you aren't even looking at it. Now we're talking. This is the kind of shape that we were looking for from before. This is, you know, now, yes, the day has passed. We've gotten longer. But this is the kind of shape that is cool. You know, you got this interesting little, shake it down here. You got this cool haze bit. You got light, then you got dark up here. That's cool. Then you got on his faces. Like, look at this. This is that shadow that we're talking about. Look at that. You got the eye light there. You got the eye light here. Here a light, there a light, everywhere a light, light. And then you got nice shape here on the face. Like this is what we were looking for. And you could take this even further in the grade, darken down those walls a little bit. You know, this can be pushed a lot further. I know I saw in the email that I forget who this was actually. Let's see. This was Joshua Hill. Yeah, this is the best setup. You know, you could take it even further in the grade. I saw that you said that this wasn't graded before they put it online, which is a serious drag, and which happens all the time. So don't be miffed or confused. This is a regular thing where people will just push shit out right at the last second because someone shit the bed and nobody remembers to do the grade. But This one is cool. You got this little light over here. You got the little haze in the background, adding to taking down the contrast. And I don't know what sort of lamp you have over here, but whatever it is, it's doing the job because it's getting this eye, it's getting this eye, and it's getting nice shape on them. So I imagine it would have to be fairly big, something over here in the bigger region to get that sort of soft shadow here. So I would say this, I don't know, I wouldn't, if I was looking down the eyepiece, I'd say I've done pretty good here. Like I wouldn't change anything there. We're good to go. So that's it. That was the project for this week. Again, if you guys are sending stuff in, thank you very much for putting it out there so that other people can see. And I know Josh is in here now. I can see it. So if you have questions about how this thing was actually shot, he's the man to go to on that. So fire away. But other than that, I can't really think of anything else unless there's questions. That'll probably do it, I think. Like I said, LA, and this is again where I put it out to Patreon and we decide what the best step forward is. But I can either, when we go to Los Angeles, I can either do something involved with Cine Gear, so either a night of Cine Gear, have a live podcast where we bring in, Chivo. I'm completely taking the piss. I have not spoken to, nor have I ever spoken to, the GOAT, Chivo. I meant the GOAT, like, I think that's what people actually call him, not like the greatest of all time. But somewhere, something like that, whether we do a live podcast and we have people come in. The bummer with the live podcast idea is that then you got to get a space, then you got to get chairs for 100 people. Then who is going to actually watch a live podcast? Who is going to want to come in and ask these questions? I don't know. I'm trying to think if I would want to go. I would want to go and see it and mix it up and get to meet everybody in person. That's where it would be nice for me. I'd get to meet people that were listening to the show. That would be fun for me personally. But to come in, you got to pay for the space, which means we probably have to charge for the tickets, which means I'd better get a good guest, which takes me being organized. And we learned about the reel, like I've got 27 hard drives. I am not organized at all. In fact, I'm the opposite of that. So the other thing would be, and this may be slightly easier, I'm still sort of toying with it now, talking to people to try and get it off the ground, would be just a lighting demo. So we go somewhere, go to a studio. The only problem is, again, got to get seats for 100 people, or are people just going to stand, or how many people do we leave it up to? I'm not sure. But I don't know. Would you go to a live podcast? That's the question. And if you know any cinematographers in Los Angeles, also, before we sign off here, that are going to be in the area end of May, we're going to be there getting a studio, getting it all kitted out in the old Airbnb. I'm basically building a sound recording studio in an Airbnb for a few weeks, which will be fun. So if you're in the LA area, you want to stop by and you want to come and be on the podcast, that is the time to get a hold of me. And if you have any ideas, like not in terms of sponsorship, because I've been in contact with a lot of people trying to get something off the ground for the lighting demo thing, which is, again, quite tricky. The live podcast, if you got any recommendations on guests that are not Chivo and are not Greg Fraser and are not Roger Deakins, who do we like to see in the live event? Because it'd probably be, I don't know, it'd be a tough sell to be like, here's the live podcast, and people would come and see that. But maybe if there was sort of a Q&A with whoever it was, or if they did their own sort of breakdown of a project or a film that they were involved in, then I could see it being beneficial for people coming out and watching and meeting and just getting to see the group. But I will definitely be at Cine Gear. Even if you don't want to come to the live podcast thing, I'll be there shooting the shit at least a few of the days in between all the live podcasts. So, all right, let's, what do we got here for questions? Yeah, lighting demo with another DP. That's a good one, Max. With another DP. Yeah, I'd watch that too. Of course, I don't want to see myself talk. Okay. Yeah, Rena Yang. I think that's how you say her name. She's awesome. She does some crazy cool stuff. The problem is, and this is where it gets complicated, making suggestions like Rena Yang is fantastic. I don't think that she lives in Los Angeles. And I don't think she's going to take 4 hours out of her day to come down to the studio and talk to 100 of us. Okay. Yeah. Mole Richardson's. Yeah, like those things, it's also tricky because finding a location for this thing, if I'm coming over right during the Cine Gear period, finding a location that has a stage that isn't already being used for this is not like I didn't come up with this idea all by myself. Well, let's take advantage of all of the thousands of people in the film industry being in Los Angeles for 4 days, right? This is not an original idea. Everyone else and their mother has thought of this idea, and they're all doing these things. And our little niche of the cinematography universe plays backseat to Mole Richardson's and Airy and whoever else that I've contacted. So it's a drop in the ocean, essentially. But if you know of any spots, if you know of any studio location available that will seat 100 people, and we can have some fun and drink some beer, then definitely let me know. But I've probably gone on too long. Let's do what else we got here. Why Cine Gear and not NAB? NAB is in Vegas, which I'm not that familiar with. Step number one. Number two, most of the people, and the whole reason that I am actually coming to Los Angeles is to do live podcasts, which I talked about before. Most of the people live in LA. NAB sucks. That also plays into it. Cine Gear is fun. I've been a few different times, and every time I've had a good time talking to people because the crowds lessen as the days go by. You know, you catch the end of it, and you can actually talk to people one-on-one, and I don't know. It seems much more geared towards the stuff that I'm interested in. So that's why Cine Gear instead of NAB. Plus, it's on the back lot. You know, shoot a movie while you're there for free. Anyway, that's going to do it. Next week on the podcast is Breakdown, followed by, I think an Oscar-nominated... I can't remember now. I don't know if it's nominated. Actually, the Oscars aren't out. Golden Globe it was up for. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to make any promises. You guys will see the guest. But yeah, next week on the podcast is Breakdown, and then back to interviews and more of this live stream stuff. So get the questions in, get the ideas in for the live podcast, for guests. Try and, if you can, this is probably too much to ask of the live stream community, but if you can, it doesn't really help if you say Roger Deakins. Just saying. Doesn't really help if you say someone that doesn't live in America, or even more so if they don't live in Los Angeles, right? Because that's who's going to come out to help us out and to give us all a good time. So that's going to do it. We'll see you next week. Bye.